The government shutdown has swept across America, and out in the fields, people are feeling it in their own quiet way. Not through breaking news or press briefings, but through the silence that follows. Tractors sit still on open ground. USDA offices are locked. Letters about aid and payments have stopped coming. There's no sound of engines now, only wind moving through corn that's ready to harvest. Farmers still rise before dawn, still walk the rows, but there's a different kind of waiting in the air, slow, heavy, and uncertain. We'll take you to 7 states where this shutdown isn't just a policy debate anymore. It's a rhythm disrupted the heartbeat of small towns and family farms, starting to lose its steady pace. Right in the middle of harvest season, America is holding its breath. And in that silence, a harder question takes root if the government stands still. How long can the land keep moving? The big picture. Before we visit each state, we need to take a step back to see how this government shutdown has quietly rewritten daily life across America. It's not just the farmers feeling the strain, it's families, veterans, parents, and workers in every corner of the country. Across the nation, more than 800,000 federal employees have been sent home without pay. That's 800,000 families suddenly watching savings drain, bills pile up, and rent deadlines creep closer. Airports are running on skeleton crews. Safety inspections are delayed. National parks stand closed, their gates rusting under autumn rain. In hospitals, medical researchers have halted studies that could save lives. At food banks, demand is rising as federal nutrition programs stumble under limited funds. Even the smallest towns are caught in the ripple: the mail carrier who skips a paycheck, the young couple whose loan papers sit untouched on a government desk, the single mother waiting on benefits that never arrive. It's easy to call this a shutdown. But for millions, it feels more like a slow unspooling, a quiet undoing of the routines that keep this country moving. America is still breathing, but each breath feels heavier. The longer this pause drags on, the clearer it becomes. This isn't just a budget fight or political standoff. It's a test of endurance, trust, and unity. For the first time in a long time, the country is staring straight at one of its greatest challenges in modern history. A challenge that demands patient sacrifice and something deeper than politics to overcome. If you understand the weight of this moment, then come with us to the first state where families, farmers, and workers are trying to stand their ground against the stillness. Number 1, Iowa. You do need those USDA programs, said Tim Kauser, a farmer near Zering, Iowa. We'll manage if it's short, but when it drags, the holes in the system show. That's the tone across Iowa, now steady voices, masking growing anxiety. In this state where nearly 1 in every 5 jobs ties back to agriculture, even a brief federal shutdown cuts deep. County USDA offices have gone quiet. Service center phones ring without answer. Payments that farmers counted on this month for conservation programs, crop insurance, or disaster recovery sit frozen in digital limbo. Across the country, more than 42,000 USDA employees have been furloughed, and Iowa's share of that number includes loan officers, technicians, and program staff who make the system work. Their absence has turned paperwork into waiting games and planning into guesswork. The Farm Service Agency, usually the bridge between Washington and the field, is now silent. Economist Chad Hart from Iowa State University put it plainly. Even short interruptions in payments could deepen farmers' economic turmoil. It costs money to run those combines at harvest. Fuel, labor, equipment, and credit all depend on timing, and timing is the first casualty of uncertainty. The Iowa Corn Growers Association echoed the warning. President Mark Mueller explained that while essential inspection and food safety services continue, local farm offices are shuttered, and farmers can't access the programs that keep operations stable. In other words, the engine is still running, but one piston at a time. Without weekly USDA crop progress reports, grain traders and co-ops lose one of their most trusted tools. Futures markets become guesswork. Elevators hesitate to lock in prices. Trucking contracts hang by the phone. As the data goes dark, confidence drains with it. It's not just numbers on a screen. In Boone County, a co-op delayed its fall feed order because loans were paused. In Jasper, a dairy farmer held back repairs on milking equipment, waiting to see if his loan guarantee would clear. In Madison County, a family that sells soybeans directly to regional buyers postponed a shipment because the buyer couldn't secure financing. Small decisions stacked one on another add up to a kind of stillness that rural America knows too well. The pressure reaches beyond farms. Mechanics, truck drivers, diner owners, and school districts feel the slowdown. The farm economy moves like a circulatory system, and right now, one of its arteries is clogged. Tim feels that weight every morning when he steps outside. He checks the fuel gauge before starting the tractor. He checks the mailbox before breakfast, hoping for word from the FSA. Inside the farmhouse, his wife Emily spreads unpaid bills across the table like a deck of cards. Their son Tyler, home on weekends from community college, helps with repairs, but here's the tension behind every quiet sentence. Emily keeps her voice even. "We've been through dry years, storms, bad prices," she says, "but this one's different. You can't fight silence." Still, the spirit of Iowa remains practical, uncomplaining, rooted in work. Neighbors share tools, swap diesel, and offer credit when banks can't. Churches open community dinners to keep folks together. The land teaches patience, but patience has its limits. Experts warn that if the shutdown stretches much longer, those limits will show. Deferred maintenance leads to breakdowns. Missed payments trigger penalties. Stress leads to decisions that can last far beyond the harvest season. Every lost day now is a seed planted for hardship next year. As the sun sets over those endless fields, the rows glow gold and quiet. Tim stands by the fence line, hat in hand, watching the light fade. Emily leans in the doorway. Tyler kicks at the dust. The farm is still here strong, waiting proud, but the silence feels heavier than ever. And somewhere in that stillness, the question hangs. If the help stays silent, how long can the heartland keep beating? Number 2, Wisconsin. The morning light in southern Wisconsin always comes soft. It rolls across the hills, catching on white barns and silver silos. Cows line up in the chill air, their breath turning to mist. Inside one small dairy barn near Monroe, the hum of the milking machine blends with a country radio that no one's really listening to. Buckets fill, pipes rattle, another day begins. But lately the trucks are late. Milk cools in holding tanks longer than it should. Paperwork for a new operating loan sits unsigned at a county USDA office with the lights out. The shutdown, now stretching into its third week, has turned ordinary mornings into waiting games. Wisconsin has more than 6,000 dairy farms, more than any other state in America. Yet the dairy state is running on borrowed time. The Farm Service Agency has paused most loan and payment processing. The farmers who rely on those funds for feed fuel or replacement parts are left in the dark. Even those who manage to keep production steady face a different kind of uncertainty. Where will the milk go if processors can't move product fast enough? It doesn't take long for things to tighten, said Brody Staple, president of the Edge Dairy Farmer Cooperative. "We work on thin margins, and when even one cog in the system slows, the whole wheel grinds." The government's official line says essential services continue, inspectors' food safety checks, and shipments critical to health or export. And yes, some of that work carries on. But state programs that depend on federal money are stretched thin. Wisconsin's own Department of Agriculture warns that prolonged gaps in funding could stall programs that help farmers cover disaster recovery, environmental compliance, and even mental health support. Farmers don't stop because the government does, said agricultural economist Chad Hart from Iowa State University. But without those supports, every decision they make carries more risk. At the Staple family farm near Cedar Grove, the numbers speak louder than words. Feed prices are up 12% this month. Diesel is climbing again. Payments from a federal dairy margin protection program are frozen. Their cooperative has begun staggering pickups to save costs. Every delay has a cost, not just in dollars, but in lost rhythm. John Holovwet of the Wisconsin Dairy Business Association described the pattern as a ripple that turns into a wave. In a shutdown, cash flow dries first for small dairies. Then truckers haul fewer loads. Local processors trim hours. By the end of the month, everyone feels the drag. And while officials in Washington talk of stopgaps and negotiations out here, the fixes come from neighbors. Co-ops extend credit. Feed suppliers offer a handshake grace period. Churches open fellowship halls to hold community dinners for families who can't keep up with bills. It's quiet generosity, the kind that doesn't make headlines but keeps the lights on 1 week longer. On a broader level, the question grows heavier. What is the government doing for the state that calls itself America's Dairyland? So far, the answer is paperwork promises and public reassurances. The emergency safety inspections continue, but the support systems that sustain small operations, the financial lifelines, the planning tools, the timely data remain locked behind furloughed desks. And still, the cows don't wait. The milk keeps coming. The fields need tending. The families keep rising before dawn. They adjust, improvise, hope, and pray. The work continues not because it's profitable, but because it's who they are. As the sun dips low behind the silos, the sky turns the color of copper and cream. The day ends the same way it began: steady hands, quiet breath, and a hope that tomorrow brings movement from somewhere beyond the horizon. Because in Wisconsin, the milk is still flowing. But for how long it can keep flowing without the system behind it, that's a question no one here can afford to leave unanswered. Number 3, Arkansas. The numbers hit before the headlines did. In Arkansas, disaster relief payments totaling more than $150 million were frozen when the shutdown began. Federal loan applications stopped mid-process. Crop insurance reimbursements lifelines after this summer's floods never arrived. Rice growers in the Delta were the first to feel it. Thousands of acres were underwater in July, and the recovery depended on promised federal aid. That aid is now locked behind empty offices and unanswered phones. Poultry producers across the state are waiting on export paperwork and inspection certifications. Even catfish farmers in the South report delays in feed assistance and disaster reimbursements. The wound is not loud, but it is deep. Rural Arkansas runs on thin margins and long memories. When money stops, movement stops. And in places where nearly every paycheck is tied to the land, a federal freeze becomes personal in days, not weeks. Timing couldn't be worse, said Brian Harden of the Arkansas Farm Bureau. These fall payments are what farmers use to plan the next planting season. Without them, everything backs up: repair, seed orders, hiring, transportation. The Arkansas Department of Agriculture confirmed that more than 60 USDA offices statewide are closed or running with minimal staff. Wes Ward, the state Secretary of Agriculture, said the department is monitoring impacts daily, but acknowledged that state funds can't fill the gap if the shutdown stretches longer. Our role is limited without federal coordination, he explained. The silence isn't just on paper, it's in the rhythm of life. In Desha County, the co-op grain elevator stands half full because trucks aren't running on schedule. In Stuttgart, a rice mill has slowed operations while waiting for certification renewals. In Pine Bluff, a catfish processor is running 2 days a week instead of 5. For farm families, the strain blends into daily chores. The Johnsons, who run a 200-acre rice and soybean farm outside DeWitt, had been counting on a USDA disaster check to rebuild a damaged levee. They filed their paperwork in August. September came and went. Now, with October half gone, they've patched the levee themselves using borrowed equipment from neighbors. "We can't just sit and wait," said Angela Johnson. "The land doesn't wait for politics." Her husband Ray checks the forecast every night. More rain is coming. He shrugs when asked how they'll manage. "You pray it holds," he said. That's about all you can do right now. Meanwhile, small-town stores and suppliers are feeling the slow bleed. The hardware shop in McGehee reports sales down by a third. A local feed store in Lanoke says farmers are buying in smaller quantities, paying in cash instead of credit. Even the church food pantry in Helena is seeing new faces, not unemployed workers, but full-time farmers whose cash flow has dried up. Economists at the University of Arkansas warn that if payments remain frozen for another month, farm debt in the Delta could rise by as much as 10% before year's end. That's not a crisis yet, but it's a trajectory that scares even the most stoic producers. The agricultural economy can absorb short shocks, said Professor Alvaro Duran Morat, but long ones leave scars. For now, there's little clarity from Washington. Some monitoring, some press conferences, but no checks, no disbursements, no timeline. Arkansas keeps waiting. But this time, even that strength is being tested. The payments, the loans, the data, the trust all paused. The land keeps producing, but the system that sustains it has gone still. And as dusk settles over the Delta, the flooded fields mirror the sky again, a calm surface hiding deep water. The Johnsons stand by their patched levee, listening to the frogs return. It looks peaceful, but the stillness carries a question that no one here can yet answer. If the water rises again and Washington is still silent, who will be left to hold the line? Number 4, Texas. The morning heat came early in South Texas. Sunlight spilled over the stockyards, lighting rows of cattle trucks already lined up before dawn. The smell of dust and diesel hung heavy in the air, but no one minded. This was payday weather. At the feedlot near Laredo Ranch, hands moved with practiced rhythm. Boots hit gravel. Gates clanged. The low hum of engines mixed with laughter and talk about football scores and new calves. Further down the road, the export station buzzed with motion. Containers were stacked too high-tagged for Mexico, Japan, and South Korea, frozen beef cotton bales grain feed. Forklifts beeped, radios crackled, and for a moment, it felt like Texas was untouchable, steady as always. Then, one by one, the lights inside the administrative trailers went dark. Computers froze. Radios went silent. Trucks idled waiting for inspection papers that never came. The line to the border didn't move for an hour, then two. By midday, the heat had turned cruel, and the laughter from the morning was gone. The shutdown had reached the border. What makes it worse here isn't just delay, it's timing. Texas ships more agricultural goods than any other state, and the fall season is peak export. Every day of stillness costs millions. Beef sits waiting in refrigerated trucks, grain warms in storage, and cotton wilts under tarps that can't keep out the sun. The ports are technically open, but open doesn't mean moving. Many inspection agents are furloughed. USDA paperwork is frozen. Customs and Border Protection runs on limited staffing. What used to take an hour now takes half a day. Drivers sleep in their cabs. Ranchers wait for calls that don't come. In the Panhandle, the feedlots are full too full. Without shipments leaving on schedule, ranchers have to buy more feed than planned, and feed prices are climbing fast. The drought that burned through the region earlier this year already drained their reserves. Relief funds meant to offset that damage are paused caught in the same red tape that stretches from Washington to every dry pasture in West Texas. And unlike the corn or dairy farmers up north, Texans are fighting two fronts: the shutdown and the land itself. The heat won't ease and the cattle can't wait. Without federal inspectors, some processing plants have slowed to a crawl, not because they want to, but because one missing signature means the difference between export-ready and spoiled. At the port of Brownsville, the water glimmers under a sun so bright it looks like glass. Ships sit anchored offshore, waiting for clearance to dock. The crews stand on deck, arms folded, staring toward a coastline that's working at half speed. Every hour costs money, and no one's saying when the line will move again. In towns that depend on this flow, the truck stops the diners, the motel's business is fading. What was once the sound of prosperity has become the hum of idling engines and the sigh of heat through empty parking lots. No one says anything out loud. They just shake their heads, count their losses, and move a little slower. But the questions linger in every conversation. Why is no one stepping in? Why is no one talking about the border where America's food leaves and the world waits? There's a risk here that no one wants to name. If this shutdown keeps dragging on, trade partners will look elsewhere. Supply chains will shift. Trust will move with them. Texas. Once the proud artery of American agriculture could find itself bypassed, not by politics, but by time. And as night falls over the plains, the same trucks that started the morning with laughter sit lined in silence, headlights, dim exhaust fading into the heat. Somewhere a driver checks his watch again, then leans back against the wheel. No one says it out loud, but everyone knows if the border stays still much longer, the cost won't just be measured in dollars. It'll be measured in faith in a system that's beginning to forget how to move. Number 5, California. Engines hum in the heat. Trucks crawl along Highway 99, silver tankers shimmering under the noon sun. Refrigerated trailers line the shoulders, their doors sealed tight against rising temperature. Inside them, lettuce wilts, grapes sweat, and boxes of oranges lose their shine. Drivers pace along the gravel edge, phones pressed to their ears, voices low and resigned. Nobody is yelling anymore, they've run out of energy. This is the Central Valley on a weekday that should be booming with harvest. But the way stations are closed, the inspectors are gone, and the paperwork that moves food from field to shelf sits in suspended files. For growers, the math is brutal. Every hour, a truck waits costs money, and every day of waiting costs entire crops. From the air, the valley looks endless green and gold, stretching from Bakersfield to Redding. It's the most productive farmland in the United States, a single ribbon of earth feeding millions. But that scale has become its curse. When the system pauses here, the effects ripple to every supermarket, every school cafeteria, every dinner table. At one cold storage facility near Fresno, forklifts sit silent. Workers were sent home after management ran out of things to load. No shipments mean no wages. The packing line lights are off, and in the quiet, you can hear the sound of melting ice dripping onto concrete. 25% of America's food comes from this region. Billions in exports move through California's ports each year, or used to. Now ports at Oakland and Long Beach are backed up with perishable goods. Fruit that once traveled the world by sea is spoiling just miles from the orchards where it grew. Officials say the essentials remain functional inspections for health and safety emergency water operations. But in reality, the chain is fractured. Federal irrigation projects are paused. Water allocations frozen, lab research halted. A single missing signature in Sacramento or Washington can hold up an entire harvest's worth of paperwork. Farm workers wait in parking lots for shifts that don't come. Many are paid by the hour off the books, and a week without work means no rent, no food. They stand in the sun watching dust rise from fields they can't touch. The growers themselves aren't much better off. The small farms that power this valley rely on loans and data updates that have stopped arriving. No one can say how long it will last. The state monitors, county boards send letters. Everyone is watching, but no one can act. The machine is still and everyone is pretending it's temporary. By evening, the heat turns orange. The sky mirrors the soil, and the air smells faintly of citrus and fuel. Somewhere an irrigation pipe bursts. No one comes to fix it. The water spills into a ditch and runs off toward the road, carrying bits of soil leaves and wasted fruit. Out here, the silence feels heavier than the sun. It's not just crops dying, it's time. The kind of time that can't be replaced once it's gone. And as the trucks finally turn off their engines for the night, the valley stretches on wide, waiting and weary. The land that feeds the nation stands still, listening for a signal from a government that has forgotten how to speak. Because if this valley ever truly stops, the hunger that follows won't be theirs alone. Number 6. Maine. More than 5,000 federal employees across Maine are sitting at home waiting for a paycheck that may not come soon. NOAA offices along the coast, the ones that manage fisheries licenses and export certifications, are shuttered. Federal heating aid for 60,000 low-income households is frozen. Rural post offices, Forest Service branches, and Coast Guard support stations are running on emergency skeleton crews. To the rest of the country, those numbers might look small, but in Maine they mean life and death. Lobster exports can't move without federal certification. Fishermen can't sell without inspection. And as temperatures drop below freezing, thousands of homes that rely on subsidized heating oil are burning through the last of their reserves. At the docks in Stonington, the silence is new. Usually mornings start with diesel fumes and the clatter of traps hitting the deck. Now the boats stay moored, the tide rising and falling around hulls streaked with frost. The harbor smells of salt and stillness. Men and women who have worked the sea their whole lives linger at the water's edge, hands buried deep in pockets, eyes on the horizon. Maine's coast depends on a rhythm: pull the traps, load the trucks, ship the catch, repeat. The shutdown broke that rhythm overnight. Crates of lobster sit in cold storage waiting for inspectors who aren't coming. Exporters say they've stopped counting losses and started counting days. Every delay pushes small processors closer to closing, and every closure means another family out of work. Inland, it's colder still. In towns like Millinocket and Dover-Foxcroft, the forest roads are quiet. Federal logging permits are stalled and small mills are running half shifts. The local heating oil suppliers, the ones that rely on government contracts to serve poor and elderly residents, are taking calls they can't answer. "We'll get to you when we can" has become the new refrain. At night, the landscape feels heavier. Light leaks from old windows. You can hear the tick of baseboard heaters straining to keep up. The shutdown isn't a headline here. It's the slow tightening of daily life. Farmers who supply local markets say they can't file for seasonal grants. Fisheries scientists who track stock levels are furloughed, meaning no new data for months. Even schools that serve federal meal programs are watching budgets stretch thin. It's a web of small dependencies, and every thread is pulling apart at once. Maine's governor has promised to monitor and assist where possible. Local food banks are stepping in, churches are hosting warming shelters, and community centers are trying to cover the gaps. But everyone knows the truth: state help can't replace federal function. The longer the shutdown drags, the deeper the cold bites. On the rocky edge of Tennant's Harbor, a single light burns from a fishing shack. A stove crackles inside. Outside, the tide keeps moving slow and relentless. Buoys clink in the dark water, marking traps that can't be checked until the government says so. The people here are used to surviving winters. But this isn't weather. This is something quieter and harder to thaw. Number 7, Washington. All the roads from the last 6 states lead here. From the frozen fields of Iowa to the fogged harbors of Maine, every story of waiting, every locked office, every stalled truck ends in this same place, the city that made the decisions and then fell silent inside them. Washington, D.C. looks alive from a distance. The marble glows. The dome still catches sunrise like nothing's wrong. Cars circle the rotaries, fountains ripple, and the flag above the Capitol waves steady in the winter air. But step closer, and the rhythm falters. The hum of motion is there, but the purpose is gone. This is the quiet center of the shutdown, a place that keeps moving even when the heartbeat is stopped. Nearly 1 million federal workers across the nation have been furloughed or forced to work without pay. Tens of thousands of them live here in this very city. Their absence isn't marked by protest signs or speeches. It's felt in smaller ways: an espresso machine switched off a lunch counter dark at noon, the buzz of fluorescent lights echoing down empty corridors of power. The cafeterias in federal buildings used to roar with the lunchtime noise of policy staff and clerks. Now chairs or stacked floors swept coffee pots cold. The metro still runs, but half the seats stay empty. The sidewalks in Foggy Bottom, usually flooded with tourists, feel like early Sunday morning all week long. The shutdown has hollowed Washington from the inside out. The monuments still gleam. The marble hasn't cracked. But the people who polish guard and light those stones are home unpaid. Their silence carries through the city like an echo inside a vast dome. The government here isn't dead. It's suspended like a conversation cut mid-sentence. Screens flicker in offices with no one to read them. Memos sit unsigned on mahogany desks. A security guard in the Capitol walks his usual root boots, tapping marble that amplifies every step. It's a working museum of its own paralysis, and yet the lights never go out. The Capitol glows all night, the monuments floodlit as always. To the rest of the country, the image on TV still looks strong, the symbol of unity, of process, of order. But anyone who walks these streets knows the difference between a building that's lit and one that's alive. This is where the weight of the other 6 states lands: all the frozen loans, the stalled trade, the uninspected goods, the unpaid workers. Every small silence across the country has its echo here. It's not just bureaucracy paused. It's belief interrupted. The diners in Arkansas, the truckers in Texas, the farmers in Iowa, they all lead back to these empty corridors. The decisions that could ease their burden wait in inboxes behind locked doors. At sunset, the sky turns copper over the Potomac. The city glows like a promise it no longer remembers how to keep. And as darkness settles, the sound that remains isn't outrage or debate. It's the soft hum of a machine that keeps running out of habit, not conviction. Through every frozen field, every waiting dock, every silent town, one truth kept showing up: people never stopped moving. They worked without guarantees. They shared what they had. They stayed steady even when the system around them lost its rhythm. That's the thing about this country. It bends, but it doesn't break. It gets tired, but it doesn't quit. The power never only lived in the buildings or the budgets, it's always been in the hands that keep things going when no one's watching. So wherever you are tonight, whether you're running a farm, driving a rig, teaching a class, or just keeping your home warm, remember this: the nation is still breathing through you. The noise from Washington may fade, but the heartbeat of America never does. Because even in the quiet, the light still moves.
This video does not promote division within the United States or encourage segregation. All content is presented for the purpose of exploration, analysis, and fostering discussion based on current events, public sentiment, and social trends. We fully respect the United States Constitution and all federal regulations. If today analysis made you think, drop a comment so we can keep the conversations going. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you will never miss our next independent deep dive.